living with the seal, that was a very, very, a lot of people read that book. A lot of people are into, the whole the David Goggins stay hard movement. We love it. Gives us the inspiration. Sometimes you need that little kick in the butt to wake up in the morning and go for that run. Living with him for 30 days. The question I have for you, does Goggins have a secret, friendly, soft side that we don't know about and don't see? Or is it really all like stay hard all the time?
Well, I haven't spoken to him in a while, so I don't know what he is like now. But when I met him in 2006. So I met him 16 years ago, and he was a part of my life more than just 30 days. I wrote about 30 days, but I've known him for a long time. And yeah, I mean, he has, or had, I should say, as far as when I was rolling with them more, an intensity that I don't think he's ever going to lose.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask him. But what I loved about Goggins is they always say surround yourself with like-minded people. But I always found why? They do. They think I want to surround myself with people that aren't like me so I can learn about them. I love meeting people that are really great at what they do in fields that I'm interested in, like spirituality, the monks, mindset, Goggins, business. I live with my wife is an incredible entrepreneur, health and wellness. So I seek out these people that are great at things that I'm interested in, and Goggins was one of them.
Amazing. A key lesson that really resonated with me, and it goes back to what you said about having these huge goals and then chunking it down, like starting with the, you had to get the approval, and then it's like, all right, now we got to build a team, and now we've got to do all of these things that right, we've got to find the right pieces around us. One thing you wrote about your experience with the SEAL is that your perspective on time changed. You learned how to control your mind. And in particular, you wrote that SEAL just wanted to get better tomorrow, right? That was his perspective. It wasn't like this big overwhelming idea. It was just focusing on getting better tomorrow. Why is it from your perspective? And to me, I see a clear theme, right? Like people who overthink or who make a big plan and then they try to measure up to that plan, get overwhelmed, right? You seem to be much more in the immediate, and it's much easier to kind of persevere through the immediate. Why do you think, from your perspective, that thinking too far ahead and sometimes over planning, overthinking can be detrimental to actual perseverance and pushing through the grit?
I think there's a lot of ways to answer this. I think a lot of people shortchange the journey when they think too far ahead, and they go right to the end, and they eliminate the steps. So I'll give you an example. That's just Ultraman. It wasn't a 5-year ahead or big thing, but I had a goal. But I love the workouts. I love the journey. If I was studying for the bar, you have to have a passion for the process, the actual late nights. There has to be an appreciation for that because everything requires that. You didn't just take the bar and pass it. You had to stay up late and study, and it stunk, and you sacrificed and all that. Guess what? That's the same with every single big goal that you have. There's no way to get around that. And I love the process. So the relationship, people think of relationships in terms of people. How's your relationship, Fred, with your son or your parents or whatever? But they rarely think about their relationship with money, really understand their relationship with money. Why am I working? What do I want to do with it? What do I use my money for? And the time.
Yeah, what are the sacrifices, right? What are the time sacrifices, the health sacrifices? So many people grinding for that money. Sometimes I think they're unaware of all the sacrifices they're making along that sort of chase.
Or they think they have forever to do it. I'll do Ultraman next year. I'll take the bar next year. I'm sure everybody listening to this knows they're going to die. There's no one listening to this podcast that doesn't think that. But I guarantee you that 99.9%, maybe yourself included, don't have their graveyard plot picked out. They haven't given their passcodes to their significant other. Here's the key to my security box. If something were to, God forbid, happen to me. Here's my Instagram path. They haven't done that. The reason is they know they're going to die, but they don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Because if you knew definitively you had a week to live, you would have all that mapped out, right? So we don't think it's even possible that something could happen to us. We don't think we could get in a car accident or we could wake up with a diagnosis. We're bulletproof
Yeah.
because that happens to other people. Until you realize that any day, my relationship with time is, I believe, so unique. I'm so aware of my mortality. I'm so aware of every single day. I talk about it. I think about it. Talk to my wife about it. I always say to my wife, like, how both of our parents, I was not true anymore, but I used to say all the time, both of our parents are alive. Our kids are healthy, knock on wood. Like your job, your role, how could life even get better? And like, I'm always bringing her to like what it is. And I'm aware that it can all change. And it did change for me, as it will for almost everybody. I'm sure the people that got diagnosed with cancer didn't think, most often they were surprised. I got this thing, I'm it checked out. Oh my God.
You never think it's going to happen to you. Like it's the classic, right? Like or it'll happen like one day that's so distant that I don't really have to kind of think about how I'm living my life right now. It's the Memento Mory thing, right? Like remember that you are mortal. Like that, we usually don't live with that consciousness.
If you're not thinking that, I operate with, I'm almost manic. I operate with the most insane urgency. Everything is ready, fire, aim. I hear about Ultraman, I sign up for it. I don't know where it is. I don't know how cold the water is. I don't know. I'm in. And then I'm going to figure it out. Marquee Jet. Great idea. I mean, there's a little bit of research behind it, obviously, but I don't have it all figured out. I don't have the time to wait to figure it out. If I have the enthusiasm, if I can see it in my mind's eye, if I can see it, like I could do this, and my heart, if my intuition is telling me that I can make this happen, again, with no airplanes, not knowing anything, but I could see a path, and I see what it looks like. I go for it.
It's a very inspiring approach you have. I have to say, like I went more like the sort of the school path and like the planning everything out and planning everything like 20 years in advance. Right? And it took me a long time to sort of reconnect with my intuition, with my desires. Right? And when I read your book, you wrote something about how an experience is like a deposit in a bank account. It's something you can draw on, and it's so true. When you've had these amazing experiences, anybody that's had great experiences in their life, something you can go back to with your memories, something that feeds you for your entire life. And you wrote this line, you wrote, if you climb Mount Washington with someone, like you'll have an experience with them, like you'll have lifelong memories. And I have to confess, when I read that line, it struck a chord. I started sending out some texts. I'm like, guys, we're climbing Mount Washington next year. A few people think I'm crazy, but we're doing it. We are doing it next year. It was inspired by a line in Living with the Monks. So I had to give you credit for that. That's going to happen.
Fred, when I shot Living with the Seal, so Living with the Seal was my first book. I went to 14 publishers, and I wasn't on Instagram. Maybe I had like 200, 700, something like 2,000, 700, something like that, like nothing followers. And most of them like fraternity brothers, my family, my coworkers. 14 publishers rejected it. I didn't even get a meeting. I didn't even get a face-to-face meeting with any of the publishers. All right. And then I knocked on the door of a small independent publisher called Center Street, which is a division of a bigger publisher called Hachette. And the editor, Kate Hartson, gave me a shot. Okay. She gave me a shot. And the book became, a huge hit. New York Times bestseller, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm sharing this story is it is the exact example of my journey. 14 people said no, and I kept going until I found the one yes. The only thing I'm good at, it's like the only thing I'm good at is not the only thing, but is not quitting until I find a path to success. That's it. I could have easily been like, and the book would have never came out. But I was going to exhaust every possible option. I would exhaust every possible option, from smaller publisher to smaller publisher to smaller publisher to self-publishing it. And ultimately, I would have found the way to put that book out, even if she said no. And that's not a superpower, man. That is just an unwavering commitment to not negotiate your goal. And I have an unwavering commitment to that. And it doesn't always work. But I've always found that there's only two outcomes: success, or you've exhausted every possible option and it didn't work. And either one of those is okay. It's okay to fail, but not to quit. Not to quit. And there's a big difference between failing and quitting. Quitting is like, this sucks. I don't have what it takes. I'm not, I don't want to go through this. I quit. I tap out. I'm done. Failing is, it didn't work for me. I tried everything and my product wasn't right, or the timing. It just didn't work. And that's okay too.
You can still have that self-respect knowing that you've exhausted all of your reasonable paths. You've done all the things. You've learned maybe probably some lessons along the way, but it wasn't out of discouragement for the fact that it was hard.
Or I don't have enough experience, or I'm not good enough, or any of the other self-doubt that people use to fuel a story to the public, ultimately, of why it didn't work.
Right. I love it. And this is like such a great mindset for anybody trying to achieve anything in life. And obviously your track record speaks for itself.